succeed in sales and life without selling your soul? Let's talk about it with businessman and author Jon Alwinson on Steve Brown, etc.
He's an old white guy, an author, broadcaster, and seminary professor who's sick of religion. And he's brought friends. Please welcome Steve Brown, etc.
And we're so glad you're here, that you would take time out of a busy schedule. Spend it with us is a high and holy compliment. And as you know, we never waste that time that you give to us. In case you're wondering, I'm Steve, the aforementioned old white guy. Matthew Porter, our executive producer, is here. It's too late for Matthew to earn his way into the nice list. He's just hoping to win an appeal. That's not bad.
Yeah, my lawyer says we have a shot, so we'll see.
Our producer, Jinx, is in the little glass booth. Jinx is already making his list and checking it twice. Of course, it's his enemies list that he's making. And our one-time IT department, John Myers, is in his tech bunker. Some people light up a room. John lights up his entire neighborhood, and that's true. Mm-hmm. And some of his neighbors are not that pleased with that. His friends would stand with him, but they lock the gate and won't let people into his development. What's with that? But at any rate, I'm sure John will be showing us some pictures of the light show that he puts on every year. Dr. George Bingham is the president of Key Life. George often wonders if the gifts the wise men gave were considered tax deductible.
We would give them a receipt.
Yeah, right. That's what I've been doing all this morning, dealing with receipts. And Kathy Wyatt is the soft, feminine side of the program. Kathy, I understand that you built a whole subdivision of gingerbread houses this past weekend.
We did. You know, for somebody who dislikes the holiday festivities as much as you do, you would not have been impressed at all. But real people thought it was just
normal
fabulous.
People,
yeah, normal human beings thought it was just great.
You do that every year, don't you?
Yeah, we do.
A bunch of kids come over and you make gingerbread houses.
Mm-hmm. Matthew's kids were there, and yeah, it was great.
Do you eat any of it, or
the kids do?
No.
The kids do.
Oh,
one of the things they made there, I'll tell you this really fast. One of the things that I gave them this year was a box of cookies that are shaped like sweaters. And of course, you know, big deal at Christmas time is ugly sweater. I mean, literally ugly sweater competitions. And so that was one of the things they could do with cookies. And one of Matthew's daughters did an ugly sweater that absolutely, hands down, wins the title. It must have been about 7 or 8 inches thick. And there's a picture of her trying to wrap her mouth around it, which was really hard to do. But she loved it. So.
And those kids love it
they do.
every year. Well, we got a great guest, and the guest is in studio, which is rare. We don't have to use the Zoom thing. His name is Jon Alwinson. And if that name sounds familiar to you, that's because his dad is one of the voices of Key Life, and his mom is the power behind both of them.
That's true.
Jon is a sales veteran with more than 15 years of experience. In addition to winning a whole list of numerous awards, both as an individual and team leader, he spends a great deal of time in one-on-one coaching. Jon's new book, which I hold in my nicotine-stained fingers, is titled Relentless Sales, The Skills, Mentality, and Faith Needed to Be Great in Sales. And I had an opportunity to read this book in manuscript form, and I dreaded it, Jon. Whenever a friend asks you to read a book, you'd think, oh my, and if it's awful, what in the world? It double that when the friend is the father of the author, because you can get into serious trouble doing that. So I read it with fear and trepidation and loved every word of it. It's a book not just about sales. It's a book about life. It's a book about being faithful. It's a book about not giving up. As you know, this is the first time we've ever had anybody on this program with a book like this. I mean, we generally deal with the Graf Wellhausen documentary hypothesis or issues that have to do with theology and sociology and philosophy, but we decided this was so good we wanted to talk to you. What came over you to write a book?
Wow. Well, Steve, thank you. Appreciate you having me, and great to see you guys. Thanks for having me here. Guys like you, Steve, my dad, who have both written books, I really felt like God gave me a story that he wanted me to tell, share some of my story to ultimately add value to people who are in business and sales in particular. So,
why did you go into sales? I mean, were you flipping a coin, or did you get a voice?
Wasn't smart enough. Wasn't smart enough for finance, and marketing was too creative. So sales was for me. So yeah, I mean, it was from the get-go. People skills. We talk about mentors in chapter 1, but all my mentors said sales is really your niche.
Oh man, that's good.
Yeah.
Do you feel God's pleasure when you're selling stuff?
I do. When you do it the right way and you do it ethically and you do it the way you know God's guided you to sell and lead, absolutely.
You know, my mentor, Fred Smith, when I heard, he was asked that often, and it's the question that we opened the program with: can you be a Christian and successful in sales? And he said, I don't see how you can be successful if you're not a Christian.
Yeah, amen to that.
At least successful in a very defined and particular and wonderful way.
Mm-hmm.
You ever face ethical dilemmas in your sales, and you've got to say, I could make a bunch of money if I just spin this a little bit. And then, did you give in? Or
Spill the dirt.
Getting ready to ask for contributions.
Yeah, right.
No, do you face those dilemmas? You do, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And different. When you work for a good organization, they take that out of the equation. So the company I work for now does a phenomenal job of being very transparent with the offerings, right? So if you meet this criteria, you get X price. If you meet this market share criteria, you get this price. And so I feel like the good organizations take that out of the equation, and they tell you what you can offer given commitment and market share and things.
And so they're ethical at their very base.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of corporations are not.
Correct. And it's easy to, be with, and that's why I wrote this book. It's another reason I wrote this book, is to change the narrative on sales.
Oh, that's so good. We get a lot of people that write to us, and I've gotten this as a pastor, people who ask, they're in a situation with a company that is not ethical, either to them or to the customers, and they ask what to do. Mm-hmm. Do you stay and try to make a difference, or do you make an obscene gesture and leave?
I think it's the latter, to be honest. It's very hard to change
a corporate
culture. Very difficult. So if there is a culture of, it's an unethical culture, leave as soon as you can. Find a company that you can get behind, a product, service, solution that you are excited about, and some organization that fits because you're not going to change CEOs, board of directors, et cetera.
That's true, except for a major miracle.
Correct.
And then get out of the way too.
That's right.
What are you selling now, and what will you give me a discount on?
Oh, that's so funny. So right now we sell all things for endoscopy procedures. So if you're 45 years age or older, you need to get in and get a colonoscopy as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. We sell everything for that procedure: the devices, infection prevention products. We sell capital equipment, literally everything and anything and everything you need for medical procedures. That's what my organization sells.
That's.
I'm
That's
waiting for the
different.
response.
No.
I know.
I've never.
Where are we going with this one?
I know where I go. My doctor said I'll see you again in 5 years, And I said, no, you won't. I ain't doing this again. I'm old, man. I'm just not doing it. Do you? It doesn't matter what you say if it's a good product. If you follow the principles of this book, that works for everything, doesn't it?
It really does. And I give the skills, the mentality, and faith needed to be great in sales. I give that playbook. So if this was my son entering sales, I mean, he's got a ways before he's in sales, but this is the playbook that I would give any up-and-comer into sales, and it teaches them the skills they need, the mental toughness they need, and the faith. And I blend all three of those things together through this book.
You know, and we got to back out pretty soon, but one of the things that is refreshing about you is that you've taken a calling and it made it into a calling. This isn't something that you decided. It's something that God decided. And you made it into your life work, and you're giving it everything you can give it in the same way you would have done if you were a preacher like your dad and gave everything you were going to give to that. And by the way, guys, that is biblical. It's doctrinally correct. Whatever you do, whether you're selling cars or medical equipment or pipe tobacco.
What?
Well, I thought I'd throw that in just in case.
Something he would ask for a discount on.
Yeah.
This is a great book. You're going to be a great conversation. Relentless Sales, the skills, mentality, and faith needed. Thanks for joining us. We're talking with my friend, salesman and author Jon Alwinson. His new book is called Relentless Sales, the skills, mentality, and faith needed to be great in sales.
I get to ask the first question today because I've known him the longest.
I know you
true.
have.
That's the reason. That's the only reason. It has nothing to do with comprehension of the subject matter. It just has to do with the fact that I've known him the longest. Jon, when I was reading through the book the other day, there are obviously a lot of principles and things that you're trying to impart to people to help them as they walk this road, learning how to do this and do it well. And I know that some of the things that you have done and that you really want to do in the future, in addition to writing more books and all that kind of stuff, is the opportunity for one-on-one to do seminars and to really talk with people. When you get that opportunity, and because your personal faith is like central to your life, is there ever any opportunity to be able to talk about that, whether one-on-one or in a group, or how do you do that when you're, quote, out in the business world and you're not technically in a Christian setting, et cetera, because it's such an integral part of you and who you are?
The first thing I do is I ask for permission first. So I'll tell someone, so I have two examples. One, with a person on my team, I wasn't sure where she stood with faith. And so I said, I'm a person of faith. I believe in Jesus. Are you okay with me sharing, a little bit about that with you? She was going through a difficult time. Her mom had a bad diagnosis. So I'll ask up front, hey, do I have permission to talk about God, right? And so I think you can see in someone's eyes right away if they want you to go down that route. And I think that's a fair, kind way of not being in someone's face about it, but asking for permission first.
I agree with that. That's good. That's good advice.
Yeah.
It really is. Do you find that people are, by the way, Jon is an unbelievably successful salesman. This is not something he's hoping to achieve. It's something he has achieved. Do you find that people are generally turned off with talk about your faith?
I think when they get to know me and they see me and we're in person, it's a different story, right? Most people are somewhat open, I would say, to hearing about faith. And I do think people of faith have just been so quiet for so long. and have felt like they needed to be quiet about their faith. And that's a narrative I want to change moving forward. Is I want people. We talk about all kinds of things in this world. How are we not allowed to talk about God?
Yeah, so good. But be careful how you do it.
Right.
I mean, I don't open with "You're going to hell," and I'm glad.
John, you kind of the outline of the book, you include skills, mental, and faith.
Mm-hmm.
And talk about, for those people that might not be that familiar with it, give a quick overview of what the basic sales process is.
Yeah. So that is chapter 6, the developing an elite sales process. So I start with mentors, I start with identity, and I start with going all out. And then I get into the skills. A lot of books are academic books on skills and are the T's and C's of selling. I wait till chapter 6 to start getting into the skills because I think faith, mentality, getting your foundation right is the right start.
Mm-hmm.
But getting into this, I was part of a elite sales training with my first medical sales job, and they give an outline that I think everyone should have an outline. I look to it like shooting form in basketball or throwing form in football, right? If you don't have a process that you follow in sales, it's like having bad form, so you're inconsistent with your performance. So everything from pre-call plan, approaching the customer with rapport and getting to know them. Pain is the only thing in life that gets people in business to move. So the third step is identify pain. Listen, ask more questions. Then yeah.
Given what you sell,
right?
That's not very hard.
That's true.
Pain metaphorically speaking.
Metaphorically speaking, yes. You're usually sedated, Steve, during that.
Unless you want a discount.
That's true, Jinx. Oh my goodness. So demonstrating value, how your value of your product helps alleviate the pain. Like we're problem solvers as salespeople. So what's cool is if you genuinely care about what you sell and genuinely want to help the people you serve with your products and services and solutions, you're excited to listen to see if your product or service is a good fit, mutual fit.
Can anybody do this?
Absolutely.
Don't you have sometimes and you tell them, look, you're not cut out for this. You should go into vinyl repair or something. Aren't there some people that this is just, they can't do it?
Probably, but I would say this, introverts and extroverts, a lot of introverts are even better salespeople than extroverts. Sometimes I can be too much for my customers, and I sense that, and from an emotional intelligence standpoint, I'll pull it back. And you need to be more intellectual, you need to be more quiet. So I would say if you're an introvert, don't shy away from sales. If you're an extrovert, don't shy away from sales.
Okay. That would be what I would expect from you.
You talk about mentality, and, I think there's some different generational approaches to this. On one extreme, you maybe have boomers who, in their growing up, prime working years, you could work 30 years in a company, which sometimes still happens, but it's a rarity. And so there's a loyalty mindset, sometimes maybe past the point of where it makes sense, all the way down to, I guess it's Gen Z now that's just hitting the workforce. And I see these videos of them crying after an 8-hour shift. They're like, I can't go on. You're like, well, you're gonna, or you're gonna be homeless.
Right.
I wonder if you could speak to that younger generation who's just now hitting the workforce, possibly wildly unprepared in their upbringing to face what's coming their way. How would you help them get geared up mentally?
Yeah, it's tough. So the first thing I would start with is eliminate entitlement. We talk about that in chapter 12 of the book, but thinking you deserve something before you go out and earn it is one of the biggest problems I see right now. And I think that's a worldly problem right now. Like when you go in with a mindset of no one owes me anything, that's what is the beginning of a successful career. So
Of wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I think so. Eliminating entitlement, is the first thing I would encourage them to do. But I would encourage them to, learn the skills that they need, right? Come in with the right mindset, learn the skills they need, but also if they were people of faith, I would encourage them to embrace that, right? Let God work in and through you and develop you. That's a competitive advantage. So I don't know if I answered the question the way.
Yeah, you did. And I think you get to that with looking to the Bible as the model. You're like, well, there's one guy who was in charge of everything.
Right.
What did he do? And it was like, well, he kind of did the grubby stuff. He was not too good to, all right, I could do the unglamorous stuff. And I think when you do that, it's the right thing to do. But as a benefit, man, you're going to stand out so much from not having that entitled mindset and just looking for all the awards and praise.
Spot on.
You know, and we'll deal with this on the other side of the break, but we live in a culture that if you want to succeed, you can succeed unbelievably, because there's so many people that are plain lazy, who don't want to do the job, who don't care. And as that group increases, people like you can shine and do well. But we'll talk about that when we get back. The name of the book is Relentless Sales: The Skills, Mentality, and Faith Needed to Be Great in Sales. This is hard work. We're entitled. Gonna rest. Thanks for joining us. We're hanging out with salesman and author Jon Alwinson. And you can keep up with Jon at jonalwinson.com and on Twitter, on X, formerly Twitter, at Relentless Sales. Jon, somebody said when it gets dark enough, you can see a light, and even a little light will do. We have some very big cultural challenges going on right now. And it's producing snowflake kind of personalities who, as you mentioned before, have an entitlement mentality. And you want to say that's bad, but it's not bad for Christians who get what you're writing about in this book, is it? I mean, in that sense, the light shines better in the darkness, doesn't it?
It really does. Absolutely. We talked about this offline, but, adversity is one of those things that shapes us in so many ways and shapes and forms, right? And my story is a story of adversity, right? Going from, a failed business, right? So 4.5 years of a failed startup. I thought it was going to be the next big thing, right? And God has a way of humbling us, right? And then going to an associate sales rep role in med device world for a very big company, well-known household company that was just served more and more adversity. So by the time I actually had the chance to be a full-line territory manager, full-line sales rep, I went all out. I was ready to prove myself. And I think God has a very interesting way of putting us through adversity, giving us some challenges to develop our character.
Yeah. Oh, man, that is so good.
I think we've alluded to it a good bit so far, but there are other books out there, Jon, about sales, et cetera. And obviously yours is different because you bring in the aspect of faith, but is there something else? And like I said, I think you've started talking about, especially in the last segment, you were talking about some specific things that you address. But what is there specifically, a couple of things that make this really unique, almost like a manual for people that are going into sales? What am I? I've lost my ability to talk. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. A beginner talking in a microphone here. When you're starting at the very beginning and you're working your way through.
Mm-hmm. So I look at sales holistically in this book. So if this was, if someone's listening and they're just getting in business-to-business sales, or we say B2B sales for the first time, I look at this as a great blueprint to follow my lead of mistakes, things I've learned to help whoever is getting in not throw the towel in too early. I feel like I met a guy over the weekend, and he said, yeah, my daughter 1 year in, she threw in the towel. It's too much for her. And that's exactly why I wrote this book. I don't want people to quit too early, because who knows what that young lady could have been had she been developed and given a really good holistic blueprint to sales and been taught the skills, been taught the mental training needed to handle 20 no's in one day, right? And not quit. And then, the one competitive advantage that we know, knowing God as Father, living from our identity in Him, what an advantage that plays if you can embrace that and live that way.
Kind of a safety net.
It is.
That makes all the difference in the world.
You have a chapter that says "Be you."
Yeah.
Talk about that.
That's my last chapter. So I talk about a story of a territory manager that joined my team. So in 2019, and I'll leave it with this, is this rep named Jack and I have become great friends since this point. But when he first came on my team, I was like, who's this guy, right? He's very outgoing, quirky, covered the New Orleans territory in our territory, and very funny. And what I noticed with Jack is when he was with our team, and he was with me, he was fun. He was like a game show host. He was great. But when he was in front of customers, he clammed up initially. He became, really red and nervous with customers. And at one point, after kind of coaching him along, I just kind of let him have it. And I was like, Jack, you need to be you, man. You need to be who God created you to be. You're funny. You're talented. And he said, what if I don't know the answer to this? And what if he went down the road of the what ifs? And I immediately helped him see, Jack, it's not about, you tell the customer, if you don't know the answer, you tell them you don't know, and you'll get back to them as soon as possible. But you need to be yourself, authentic self, and start being fun. Be fun, Jack. And it was amazing watching Jack go from the bottom of the leaderboard to a top 10 finisher by the end of the year. And I remember sitting in a room just like this with a CEO, and she was signing a 5-year contract with our company and Jack, and she was belly laughing because Jack started living his true self. So be you when you're in sales. Customers don't want a fake persona.
Oh, that is so good. That's good about life. I wrote a book one time about wearing masks. And as I wrote the book, I realized how often I do that myself. I'm playing a role that's not me. And once I decided that I'm not doing that anymore, and I'm going to be me, everybody hated me after that.
So this is the real you.
You just got to choose the right mask.
Leave me alone. The book is Relentless Sales. The skills, mentality, and faith needed to be great in sales. And I might say to be great in life too. Sales is kind of a metaphor, if you want to make it into one, for living a life well lived. Don't want to miss a bit of this. We're going to rest up, have some gingerbread house that we're going to dismember, and then return. Talking to Jon Alwinson. And it's kind of like having family here when we talk to him. And we watched Jon grow when he was a little kid, and it's one of the good things about being old, and there isn't a lot. One of the good things about being old is that you watch the kids grow up and watch what happens to them. And Jon has absolutely shined. And his book is Relentless Sales. He's very, very good at it after screwing it up at the beginning.
That's right. No, he's right on.
Yeah. And the skills and mentality and faith needed to be great in sales. And this book is great because it's not just for salespeople. It's for living. And the principles that Jon writes about are principles that work for all of us in all kinds of places.
Jon, you have a lot of practical applications, but there's really a lot to be said for starting out from the right place. And we've talked before. We have like similar favorite authors, one of whom is James Clear.
Yep.
And he talks about this in his very popular book about identity. And the example he gives is if somebody's trying to quit smoking and you offer them a cigarette and you're like, oh, no, thanks, I'm trying to quit. Okay, that's over here. this person goes, oh, no thanks, I am no longer a smoker. Which one of those two is going to be more successful? The one who is drilled it into his identity. So I wonder if you could speak to the importance of the right identity, knowing who you are.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. Love James Clear, love Atomic Habits. I think there's that's sprinkled throughout this book, some of those key principles. But from the angle I take on identity was when I went from failed venture of 3.5, 4 years of a failed venture to being an associate rep for a couple of years and being told on a Monday night after working all day, I need to fly to Miami for a 7 a.m. case the next day. I mean, living, call it 6.5, 7 years of adversity. When I finally had my chance to be a full line territory manager, I went all out. And my dad lovingly called me out. The first year I was rookie of the year for this organization, had a really good year. And the second year, I was in contention to be the number one rep. And my dad looked at me and he said, hey, son, I see your priorities are a little out of line. He said, you're God's kid, you're an Alwinson. Live from your identity, not for your identity.
Oh, wow.
And it's a phrase that really changed my life. It was a very freeing phrase that he said, go be excellent. Try to get that number one. But if you don't get number one, you're God's kid. And there was a freeing feel that allowed me to go pursue my goals. And it's a message that I want to get out to the rest of the world is no matter where you are on a scoreboard in sales, that's not who you are, right? Your identity is God's kid. And when you live from that, it's freeing and it makes you a better salesperson.
Boy, that's good stuff.
No, I can't talk now.
No.
It's got to. Don't cry on this program. It hurts our reputation.
No crying in sales.
It's so good to see.
My eyes are sweating.
What movie is that? There's no crying.
There's no crying in baseball.
There you
Yeah,
go. Yes,
yeah.
yes,
Tom
yes,
Hanks.
yes.
League of Their Own.
Tom
Yes.
Hanks. There's no crying in baseball.
It's so good to see him grow up, except it makes me feel old. Talk a little bit, and we're kind of touching on it, your identity, but talk about having the right balance. I mean, in going all out, there's a temptation to, kind of miss some of the things that are important in your life overall. Talk some about that.
I think there are seasons in your life where you can stretch, right? And so I think the first couple of years when you're new to an organization, either you're a new rep or you're new to a new organization, those are seasons where you want to really prove yourself. In chapter 3, we talk about going all out. But you're exactly right, George. I think you have to, your identity is the barometer that kind of keeps you, in place, in my opinion. So that's why I put chapter 2 before chapter 3 is like when you understand your identity in God, you can talk to your spouse and say, babe, I think this is going to be a busy year for me, and this is what's in it for us. And I think I'm going to have to be a little bit more heavy on the work side to prove my worth early on. And I think there's more of a balancing effect after that. But there are definitely seasons when you need to go all out.
We talked to somebody recently about this, and we like work-life balance, and we've kind of like idolized that to where there's some mythical ratio when maybe what the approach is, what does God have for me in this moment for this season, knowing whatever the season is, it is by definition not forever. And then when you can embrace that, like this is what God has for me, like great, now I'm leaning into this knowing that's okay. Things are out of balance right now. If God's cool with it, y'all got to be cool with it.
Right.
That is so wise. That grid bothers me. It always has. And it always, whenever I tried to follow it, God, family, work, I got into trouble. Yeah. And God said, stop it. There's some things I want you to do, and you keep spending time playing with your kids right now. And God, that's not forever.
And God knows what you need versus what it is that you want.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's I've been dealing with that a lot over these last few weeks. I know what I want, but God knows what I need, and I need to be on that same page. I need to be on His page, and I think when you talk about when you have to make that balance, I think I think that's part of it. You have to do that.
Well,
It's like a pie, and whoever's the hungriest gets the largest piece at that time.
Right.
And then you adjust that later on in other ways. Are you, is your marriage solid, or are you looking at a divorce?
We're good. She puts up with me. Yeah. I married up, as my dad said. We married up. So
That's true.
You guys have mentioned pies and gingerbread houses, but like literally nobody has any of them here. So I'm opposed to your metaphors. I wonder if you speak really briefly. You talked about James Clear habits. There's a great quote I love. It says, "We don't choose our destiny. We choose our habits. Our habits choose our destiny." Talk to us about the importance of that on a real practical level.
yeah, I mean, so my dad's kind of coined the phrase "daily appointment with God," having his dog in the morning, and so I do think that starting with God is so key. And I outlined the habits that I have, and I do think habits are very critical to our success in business and life and sales. And so start with God. I would encourage people. My dad and I are both probably coffee addicts, so we may have 1 or 2 or 3 cups of coffee in the morning, but that time with God is so pivotal. And I think that is key, right? Learning a sales process, right? If you're newer to sales, learn the business, right? Learn how to do that, and then ask God to live in and through you through those habits that you learn. But there's a lot in this book. I don't want to take too long going in it, but there's so much for that person who's in their first couple years to, call it 10, 15 years in sales. I think everybody's really going to get something out of it.
This book when is it launching?
December 12th, Tuesday, December 12th.
Now, that's in time for you to buy this book for your grandkids, for your kids who are beginning life. This is a good book to give them a star to follow and understanding and depth. It's called Relentless Sales, the skills, mentality, and faith needed to be great in sales. Jon, it's been fun having you. Thanks for being with us.
Enjoyed it, guys. Thank you so much, Steve.
Hey, get the book. Read it. It's helpful in life. And we're going to come back after the break. It will only be for a relatively short time. We'll find out who we're going to be doing it unto next week. So don't you dare go anywhere. Great time with Jon Alwinson. That is a great discussion. There's a malaise among Christians about humility and misdefining it, and what God just wants me to sit over in the corner and whine, and I'm going to be a servant, and that's all I can be. And when He calls me, I'll show. But when the locusts eat the crop in the other country, I did something wrong. It's just, and I'm miserable, but I deserve it. The world is dark for me, but I understand why that is. It's because I'm a sinner, and I need to repent more. And it goes on and on and on. And sometimes I want to say, just shut up. Read Jon Alwinson's book, and because God wants it. God likes His kids. And believe it or not, He wants us to shine in lots of different ways. And humility is dealing with Him, not your neighbor. Humility is recognizing that grace does go downhill, and so does mercy, and so does compassion. But don't get into that thing of being a Christian, and I deserve nothing, so I'll accept nothing. That's a lie. And it's from the pit of hell, and it smells like smoke. And if you want to fix that lie in your life, and it's there in mine some, get a hold of Relentless Sales by Jon Alwinson.
By good old, what's his name?
Whatever his name was. Who's going to be with us next week?
Next week, Dr. Richard Pratt, founder and president of Third Millennium Ministries, that are teaching men and women all over the world at this point in time at no charge how to teach people.
Seminary in a
box.
They call
Exactly.
it seminary in a box. And
It's remarkable. we all remember when he started that. And, he had like 3 people that were studying, and now they are all over the world.
literally hundreds of thousands of students all over the world. And he started that. His office was next to mine at the educational institution where we were both teaching. And I used to think, Richard, you're crazy. That's not going to amount to anything. I have this gift of prophecy. Always works. Hey, we're out of here, guys, but we're coming back like Jesus. Next week, same time, same place. It's our hope that you join us. And between now and then, don't do anything we wouldn't. And that gives you a wide, wide berth.
Kathy, you sure you don't want to end this one?
I was thinking your sales skills really showed up in coming up with all the endorsements. You got a million of them.
I'm grateful for it. I wanted, part of self-publishing though too is having, you got to do it yourself.